It all started with a building, not just any building. It was the temple in Jerusalem. To the Jewish people, this was the center of the universe. It was magnificent. Giant stones, gleaming white, trimmed with gold. It looked like a mountain of snow in the sun. Josephus, a historian from that time, said some of the stones were over 40 feet long. This wasn't just a building, it was a symbol of their faith, their nation, their entire world. And Jesus' disciples were impressed. They were country boys, fishermen mostly. They pointed it out to him like tourists. Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings. You can almost hear the awe in their voices. Jesus' reply must have felt like a punch to the gut. He looked at the glorious temple, the pride of his people, and said something shocking. Do you see all these great buildings? Truly, I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down. Silence. Confusion. This was unthinkable. It was like someone today looking at Washington, D.C. and saying the whole thing would be rubble. It was more than just predicting a building's destruction. He was predicting the end of their world as they knew it. So they got him alone, away from the crowd, sitting on the Mount of Olives, looking out over the city in that same temple. Peter, James, John, and Andrew came to him privately. They had questions, big ones. Their world had just been shaken. They asked him, tell us, when will these things happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? They essentially asked two questions, maybe three, all bundled together. First, when will the temple be destroyed? Second, what are the signs that you're coming back? And third, what are the signs of the end of the world? They probably thought all these things would happen at the same time. One big cataclysmic event. What followed is what we call the Olivet Discourse. It's Jesus' longest and most detailed answer about the future. We find it in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, and it's one of the most debated and misunderstood passages in the entire Bible. Because Jesus, in his wisdom, seems to answer both questions at once. He weaves together the near future, the destruction of Jerusalem in their lifetime, with the distant future, his final return at the end of time. It's like looking at two mountain peaks from a distance. They look like they're right next to each other, but as you get closer, you realize there's a huge valley in between. Jesus starts by telling them what is not the end. This is important. He wants to manage their expectations and ours. He says, watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Think about that phrase, the beginning of birth pains. Anyone who has been around for the birth of a child knows what this means. The contractions start, they're painful, they're real, but they aren't the baby. They are a sign that the baby is coming, but you don't know if it's hours or even days away. Jesus is saying that for the entire age between his departure and his return, the world will be in labor. There will always be con artists claiming to be Christ. There will always be wars. There will always be natural disasters. We see this on the news every night. And every time there's a major earthquake or a new war, someone somewhere declares it's the end of the world. Jesus says no. Don't be alarmed. These things are the normal, painful groaning of a fallen world. They are not the final sign. They are just the background noise of history, until he returns. It's a warning against sensationalism. The end isn't triggered by the latest headline. Then, the focus gets personal. It shifts from world events to the experience of his followers. He looks at his disciples and tells them what to expect, and it isn't pretty. Then, you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. This has been the story of the church for 2,000 years. The first disciples lived it. They were arrested, beaten, and killed. Throughout history, in different places at different times, being a follower of Jesus has been a death sentence. And it still is in many parts of the world today. He also warns about problems from within. Betrayal, false teachers, people's faith growing cold and being replaced by cynicism or apathy. This is a sober, realistic picture of what it means to follow him in a hostile world. But in the middle of this dark prediction, he gives a promise and a sign. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. This is a key marker. Before the final end can happen, the good news about Jesus must reach every ethnic group, every nation, every corner of the earth. This is one of the great missions of the church. It's not just about saving souls, it's part of God's prophetic timeline. The end is waiting on the completion of this task. For centuries, this seemed impossible. But today, with technology and global transportation, we can see how this could actually be fulfilled. This is one of the few clear global signs Jesus gives. The gospel must go out. Now Jesus pivots. He gives a very specific, very strange sign. He says, "So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel to let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." This phrase, the abomination of desolation, is the linchpin of the whole prophecy. It's a direct quote from the Old Testament book of Daniel. Historically, it referred to when a foreign king, Antiochus Epiphanes, sacrificed a pig on the altar of the temple in 167 BC. It was the ultimate act of defilement and blasphemy. It was an abomination that made the holy place desolate or unusable. Jesus is saying something like, that is going to happen again. And this is where the two mountain peaks come into view. First, the near peak, the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. The early Christians, remembering Jesus' words, understood this to be about the Roman army. Luke's version of the discourse makes this connection clear. He records Jesus saying, "When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near." And that's exactly what happened. In AD 66, a Jewish revolt began against Rome. By AD 70, the Roman general Titus had surrounded the city. The Roman armies were pagan. Their standards and eagles were idols, an abomination to the Jews. When they surrounded the holy city and eventually entered the temple, it was the abomination of desolation. The historian Eusebius tells us that the Christians in Jerusalem, remembering Jesus' warning to flee to the mountains, did just that. Before the final siege locked the city down, they escaped to a town called Pella. They survived. The Jews who stayed and fought did not. The historian Josephus describes the horror of that siege. Starvation was so bad that people ate leather, and some even resorted to cannibalism. When the Romans finally broke through, they slaughtered people mercilessly and burned the temple to the ground. They pried apart the stones to get to the melted gold, literally fulfilling Jesus' words that not one stone will be left on another. The destruction was total. It was a local apocalypse. For the people who lived through it, it was the end of their world. So the warning had a direct, literal, historical fulfillment in the lifetime of some who heard Jesus speak. But there seems to be more to it. The language Jesus uses seems to go beyond a local event. This brings us to the second, more distant mountain peak of future fulfillment at the very end of time. Many people who study prophecy believe there will be another final abomination of desolation. They believe a future world leader, sometimes called the Antichrist, will do something similar. Perhaps he will set up an image of himself in a rebuilt temple in Jerusalem and demand worship. A final act of global blasphemy against God. Jesus seems to be using the tragedy of AD 70 as a pattern, a foreshadowing of an even greater crisis to come. He continues, "For then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again." Again, this has a dual meaning. For the Jews trapped in Jerusalem in AD 70, the suffering was unequaled. Josephus estimated over 1 million people died. It was a complete societal collapse. But the language also points to a future time of global tribulation, a final, intense period of suffering before Christ's return. So Jesus says, this time will be so terrible that if it weren't cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of his chosen ones, the elect, those days will be shortened. It's a picture of immense chaos and danger, but also of God's sovereign control and protection of his people. After this period of tribulation, the signs change. They move from earth to the heavens. The language becomes undeniably cosmic and final. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. This is not a metaphor. This is not something that happened in AD 70. This is the language of cosmic decreation. The very fabric of the universe seems to unravel. This is the sign that the end of the age has truly arrived. And then the main event. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. This is the climax. His return will not be secret. It will not be a quiet spiritual event in people's hearts. It will be the most public, visible, and audible event in human history. Every person on earth will see it. It will be unmistakable. He won't come back as a humble teacher from Galilee. He will come as the rightful king of the universe in overwhelming power and glory. For those who have rejected him, it will be a time of mourning and terror. For his followers, the elect, it will be the moment of their final rescue and reunion. So, Jesus has laid out a sequence general signs like wars and earthquakes, a period of persecution, a specific sign of the abomination, a time of great tribulation, and then the cosmic signs followed by his glorious return. But then he does something interesting. He shifts from talking about what will happen to how his followers should live in the meantime. The rest of his discourse is not about building prophetic charts. It's about building character. It's less about knowing the times and more about being ready at all times. He starts with a parable. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. It's a simple analogy. A farmer knows the seasons. He sees the signs. In the same way, believers should be spiritually aware. They should see the events Jesus described and understand that history is moving toward God's intended conclusion. Then he says one of the most difficult and debated sentences. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have happened. What does he mean by this generation? Some think he meant the generation of the disciples, in which case all these things must refer to the destruction of the temple in AD 70. This view makes sense of the near fulfillment. Others think this generation means the Jewish people, who as a race will survive until the end. Still others think it refers to the final generation that sees the final signs, the cosmic unraveling, and his return. Perhaps, like the rest of the discourse, it has a dual meaning, applying both to the generation that saw the temple fall and the final generation that will see his return. The exact meaning is uncertain, but the main point is certainty these things will happen. But then comes the ultimate disclaimer. But about that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. This is the great check against pride and date-setting. Anyone who claims to know the exact day or hour of Christ's return is claiming to know more than the angels and more than Jesus himself did in his earthly ministry. It's a direct command to remain humble and to stop trying to pinpoint the date. The focus is not on calculation, but on preparation. To hammer this point home, Jesus tells another story. As it was in the days of Noah, so it'll be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were living their lives, eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. The warning here is about normalcy. The world won't look apocalyptic to most people right before the end. They will be absorbed in the everyday routines of life, work, family, meals, plans for the future. They will be oblivious, not because the signs aren't there, but because they aren't paying attention. The judgment will come suddenly, like a flash flood on a sunny day, sweeping away the unprepared. The return of Christ will break into ordinary life with shocking finality. He continues this theme of sudden separation. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a hand mill, one will be taken and the other left. Life is going on as usual. Work is being done. Then, in an instant, a separation occurs. The point is not about a secret rapture, but about a sudden, final, and public division. When the king returns, a judgment is made. Given all this, what is the conclusion? What are we supposed to do? Jesus is very direct. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. Keep watch. Be alert. Be awake. Don't fall asleep spiritually. He uses the analogy of a homeowner who doesn't know when a thief is coming. If he knew, he'd stay up and be ready. Since we don't know the hour, we must be ready at all hours. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Readiness is not a one-time event. It's a constant state of being. To explain what this readiness looks like, Jesus tells more parables. The first about 2 kinds of servants. A master puts a servant in charge of his household while he's away. The faithful and wise servant does his job. He manages the house well and takes care of the other servants. When the master returns, he finds him doing his duty and rewards him. But the wicked servant thinks, my master is staying away a long time. So he starts to abuse the other servants to party and get drunk. He lives as if the master is never coming back. But the master returns on a day he does not expect, at an hour he is not aware of. And the wicked servant is punished severely. The lesson is clear. Being ready means being faithful in the small, everyday tasks God has given us. It's about how we use our time, our resources, and our authority. It's about how we treat other people in the master's house, the church. Are we serving or are we being selfish? Our actions in the in-between time reveal what we truly believe about the master's return. The next parable is that of the 10 virgins, or bridesmaids. They are all waiting for the bridegroom to arrive for a wedding feast. 5 are wise and bring extra oil for their lamps. 5 are foolish and only bring the oil that's already in their lamp. The bridegroom is delayed. They all fall asleep. At midnight the call comes, the bridegroom is here. The wise virgins trim their lamps and go into the feast. The foolish virgins' lamps have gone out. So they scramble to find oil, but it's too late. By the time they return, the door to the feast is shut. Well, they knock, but the bridegroom says, "Truly I tell you, I don't know you." This is a chilling story. The foolish virgins look the part. They have lamps. They're in the right place. But they lack the essential preparation, the oil. The oil is often seen as representing a genuine, living faith, or the Holy Spirit. They had an outward appearance of readiness, but no inner reality, and you cannot get that at the last minute. You can't borrow someone else's relationship with God. When the time comes, the door is shut. The parable ends with the same command. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour. The final parable in this section is the parable of the talents, or bags of gold. A master entrusts his wealth to 3 servants before he leaves on a long journey. To one, he gives 5 talents. To another, 2. To the last, 1. A talent was a huge amount of money, maybe 20 years of a laborer's wages. The first 2 servants put their money to work and double it. The third servant, out of fear, digs a hole and buries his master's money. When the master returns, he judges them. The first 2 are praised, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." But the third servant is condemned. He played it safe. He didn't lose anything, but he also didn't do anything. He was unfaithful because he was unproductive. He is called a wicked, lazy servant and is thrown out. Being ready is not about passively waiting. It's not about bearing our gifts and hiding until Jesus gets back. It's about actively investing in what God has given us, our abilities, our resources, our opportunities out for his kingdom. Well, God expects a return on his investment. He expects us to take risks for the sake of the gospel, to use what we have, not to hide it. Finally, Jesus concludes the entire discourse with a breathtaking vision of the final judgment. He doesn't use a parable, he describes it directly. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. The sheep are placed on his right, the goats on his left. To the sheep, the king says, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world." And the basis for this reward is shocking in its simplicity. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me, and I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. The righteous are confused. They ask, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or needing clothes, or sick, or in prison, and help you?" The king's reply is one of the most powerful statements Jesus ever made. "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Then he turns to the goats on his left. The condemnation is based on the opposite. "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink." And the king replies, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." The discourse that began with questions about signs, times, and cosmic events ends here. It ends with the practical, tangible reality of how we treat the poor, the outcast, the suffering people around us. In the end, according to Jesus, our theology about the end times matters far less than our love for the people he puts in our path. He identifies so closely with the marginalized and the needy that our treatment of them is our treatment of him. So, what did Jesus teach about the end of the world? He taught that history is headed toward a definite conclusion, his visible, glorious return. He gave us signs to look for, not to build a complex timeline, but to encourage us that God is in control. He warned of deception, persecution, and tribulation, but his overwhelming emphasis was not on predicting the future, but on preparing for it. And that preparation is not about building a bunker and storing up food. It's about keeping watch, living in a state of constant spiritual alertness. It's about being a faithful servant, using our gifts and not burying them. It's about keeping our lamps filled with oil, nurturing a genuine living faith. And most of all, it's about seeing Jesus in the face of the hungry, the sick, and the prisoner, and acting with compassion. The Olivet Discourse is not meant to scare us, but to sober us. It's not meant to make us idle spectators, but active participants. The message is simple. The king is coming back. We don't know when. So live every day as if it might be the day. Be faithful, be wise, be ready, and be kind. That is how you prepare for the end of the world.